Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Could It Be podcast. Today we have another very special episode with an amazing guest who shares her story of breast implant illness. She's a fierce advocate in the breast implant illness world. She's part of the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition. She's 3.5 years post-explant and helping women all over the world. She joins me from all the way over in the US. Her name is Heidi Brown. Here's her story. So welcome everyone to another co-host episode of Could It Be podcast. Today I am joined by the lovely Heidi Brown. Hi Heidi, thanks for joining us.
Hello Bianca, thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So where in the world are you talking with me from today apart from in your car?
So I'm chatting from the States. I'm in Prescott, Arizona, and I was out shopping, finishing my Christmas shopping, thought I was going to have enough time to make it home for this. And so I just said, okay, just pull over and we're just going to do it right now.
I love the dedication.
From my car.
No worries at all. I appreciate that you've done that for us. So what we'll start with, Heidi, tell us about your breast implant story.
Okay, so mine starts, let me back up to about 3.5 years ago. I was planning my own funeral. I had been to 7 specialists, 40 symptoms, and 9 medications, and no answers. All my tests were seeming to come back normal. I had the 2 sets of saline implants over 19 years. My first set was 13 years. My second set was 6. Mm-hmm. My first set, I didn't realize I was having problems with or was having any reactions or anything from. Just started having some breast pain and went into the plastic surgeon, and I was having a contracture, which is, when that implant starts kind of locking down and becoming really stiff. And it was almost like I had 2 little rocks on my chest going in. I was like, something's very wrong here. And at that time, he just said, listen, you just need a new set of implants. That's all. They're a lifetime. These are going to be a lifetime device. So I said, okay, go ahead and trade me out. And I had the other ones removed and the new set put in. I did have a surgeon that was really good and did take the capsules out at that time. Thank God he knew back then, I guess. But didn't say anything or say, by the way, your body is obviously responding poorly to these. So he did not tell me at all ever that these toxic bags of death were made of 42 heavy metals and chemicals. And I was told that they were safe. Those words came out of their mouth. Mm-hmm. And so I trusted my doctor. I trusted that the FDA would have a product on the market that was safe, right? I mean, they wouldn't have something that wasn't safe for the people. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why have I've been very much woken up over the last few years. I don't know. I did at one point go to my doctor at least once a week, my primary care doctor, with a new symptom. It started off, I woke up one morning and I had this terrible neck pain. And I went to get out of bed and I literally could not get out of bed. I had to do the whole log roll. I held my head and did the sideways roll because it literally felt like my neck was just going to snap off. And then a couple days later, it would move to my wrist. And a few days later, it would move to my foot. I wouldn't be able to walk. And every single week, I was calling my primary just with another symptom. And I was sent to another doctor with no hope. And so at one point, I wasn't even able to shampoo my own hair some days. I wasn't able to pick up a coffee cup without my wrist feeling like it was literally just going to snap right the heck off. So I remember going to him. And I said, finally, after a 1.5 years of being to different specialists and continually getting worse, you could see my skin was getting really jaundiced. My face was really inflamed. My eyes were so bloodshot. I looked like a heavy drinker. I looked terrible. I had purple circles. You've seen the pictures. They're just horrendous. The walking zombie, dead lady. I went from calling them every day and saying, just put me in a nursing home. And I'm just going to accept the point that I'm just never going to have any answers. I'm going to be dead before I'm 50. And I'm just going to have to accept this. By the time you guys find out what's going on with me, you're going to tell me I have some rare cancer and then I'm dying anyways because you found it too late. I just know this is what's happening. And as you know, those feelings of I'm dying inside. and the anxiety. And it became so much that I started pulling away from my family. I wouldn't let anyone take pictures without me having sunglasses on. I had, my big smile on, hoping I could just fake it through so nobody could see that I was dying and dying inside. And so, I was picking out songs so my daughter didn't have to do it. I was getting rid of all of my stuff down to, one chair and 3 pairs of shoes and down to the bare minimum. So it would be an easy transition for my family, which became a really, really hard. There were some dark times, I was doing this all on my own for the most part and, processing it all on my own. Thank goodness I was doing my painting stuff. It kind of became my therapy. And I just was like, well, you know what? We're just going to have a little fun on the way out and just go with the flow. And I went and visited, family and went to the ocean for the last time with my cousin and had all these great times and was just like, all right, this is it for me. And just recently I found one of my little journals and I went to pull out a piece of paper to write something on. And I came across this page where I was writing about coming to terms with dying and how I had accepted it. And oh my gosh, I'll tell you, I started just tearing up because honestly, I don't think I've really processed a lot of that stuff. As soon as I found out about it, I was 100% gung ho. I am not going to shut my mouth. I'm going to advocate till the day I die. So I never took that time to really process all the emotions that go with this entire process. Thank God for my sweet friend, Dr. Amanda Savage Brown. I don't know if you did get her book.
I got her book, yeah. Now, if you haven't heard of it yet, Dr. Amanda Savage Brown's book is called Busting Free, and it is available on Amazon.
Oh, I just adore her. And I have been sitting there on this book, well, since we've talked about it, going to open, going to back. And I just am so worried about all those emotions that are coming to surface.
Yeah.
That I keep avoiding it. So I'm like, okay, in 2023, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
So,
I like that as a New Year's resolution.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, next year, we'll just put it off a little bit longer. But so that's been kind of my mission also with this whole process is, what I went through and being bounced from doctor to doctor, I thought I'm never going to let another woman go through what I've gone through without speaking about it. And I will talk to literally anyone, the mechanic, the grocery guy, anybody, the bank woman. I talked to a lady at the bank last week and she had implants. I knew she did. And I waited for her. I was like, oh no, I'm going to wait for her. And then I was talking to her while she was doing my transaction. And I just brought up the breast implant illness and what I had been through. And of course, their eyes always just, fall out and the mouth drops like, oh gosh, what?
Yeah.
So
It's amazing that people don't know about it still. Like, it just blows my mind. Yeah.
And then, we were just all, streamlined into this and that this is safe and this is normal. And, barely anybody has any issues with this. And it's like the hundreds of thousands of women that we see suffering just on social media alone of what the women that we can follow.
Mm.
Imagine the ones that don't speak about it or join the groups because they're too embarrassed about it. And we have a lot of women that are suffering. So I try to be a voice everywhere I can. I've tagged my car and all my clothing and I make bags with the breast implant illness awareness. And whoever wants one, I just send them to them so they can help bring the awareness. And be out shopping, just wear it, wear your bag on your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a moment a couple of months ago, a few friends and I went out for dinner and there was this really lovely waitress and you could tell that she would have been gorgeous without the fillers, but she had a lot of fillers and stuff. And almost, I don't know, I got a feeling that I needed to talk, like I had a feeling I needed to talk to her about breast implants. And when I was paying, like she took a second, she was just staring at me. She's like, you've got really lovely skin. I'm like, I panic when I get a compliment. So I was like, oh, like I've just had my breast implants out a few months ago. I'm like, I don't know why I'm saying this. But I started talking to him like, my skin and my eyes have improved. And like, she's like, what? Like, I want breast implants. And I was like, right, that's why that feeling was there to say that to her. Right. So I was telling her all about it. I'm like, look, do your research, please. Like, I do have a podcast. You don't have to listen to that though. There's like, you go on the hashtags on social media, there's Facebook groups, like Google it. There's so much information out there before you go making a decision like that. I'm like, you're gorgeous exactly as you are. Like, she had boobs. Like, I couldn't understand like why. But yeah, it was just having that, taking that opportunity to talk to people about it, because you never know, that person at the bank, they have implants, but they also may have other friends that like have implants, and they can share that information with them too. Like, you're making a difference by doing that. Absolutely. How did you find out about breast implant illness?
Well, I had never heard about it until I was over at a girlfriend's house and we were getting ready to get in the pool. And I call it my God moment. I don't listen to the news or watch TV barely ever. I'm more of a music person. And so she happened to have her TV on outside. Here in Arizona, we hang out in the pool. That's how we get through without melting to death over here. So everyone has TVs outside on their patios. This is just a normal. And so the news station was on, and I get my first foot into the pool, and I hear Chris Pickle on our local news station. She says, "Do you have an autoimmune disorder?" Well, they had just diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis. I just started on Plaquenil like 6 weeks before that. And I'm like, yeah, as I'm stepping in, and then I hear her say, "Do you have breast implants?" And I was like, what? So I turn around and I say to my friend, I said, "Oh, you have to give me a minute. I have to listen to this special." So I'm sitting there, and come to find out, this newscaster also had breast implants at one point. And so this was her mission. She's an investigative reporter, so she was out to bring the awareness as well. How this all fell together was amazing. So I am listening to her newscast, and I am hearing all these symptoms and what they're called. They cause chronic inflammation and all of this stuff. And all of a sudden, I just have tears falling from my face. Just the realization that I'm not going to die, it finally hits me. And I start screaming to my friend, oh my God, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. It's these big breast implants that are poisoning me. It makes sense. It makes total sense. They cause chronic inflammation. They override the detoxification process. And then you start going downhill, and it's systemic, head to toe. You are going to have hair issues. I mean, from your head to your toes.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, I have every single symptom that this woman has mentioned. And so remember, I had been calling my doctor every week. So this happens on a Friday night after 5, of course. And I am just like, oh, blazes, I have to get a hold of my practitioner. So I leave messages. I leave 4 over the weekend. I know nobody's there, but I don't care. I'm so excited that I'm not going to die. They don't need to put me on oxygen this next time I come in. You don't need to go ahead and set me up for this nursing home to go into. I leave all these messages, and I call them first thing on Monday morning. And I give her till about 8:15 to get there and hear my messages. And I know she's freaking out. And it was to the point, like, when I would call, she wouldn't even say what clinic. She would see I was calling and be like, "Hi, Heidi, how are you today?" I mean, it was just, and I would say to her, like, please, I am not the crazy woman calling in with BS symptoms. Like, these are real things happening to me, because you start feeling crazy. You start feeling like I've been to every specialist that knows everything about this one cardiology because I'm having palpitations. I've been followed by oncology because they have random high tumor markers. But these are the specialists, and they can't seem to find anything. So eventually you just start thinking, oh my God, they think I'm nuts. So you start getting afraid to call. You start getting the white coat syndrome when you go in. I mean, it's just such a terrible hamster wheel that us women get on and have to suffer through this process. So I call her, and she goes, "Oh, holy shit, Heidi, I just heard your messages. You have to come in today." So I went in that afternoon, and my doctor walks in, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I just started reading about this last week. This is absolutely what is making you sick. You have to get those out." Which then leads me into the process of getting them out. Remember, I'd been followed by 7 specialists. Well, right now I'm in such a panic because I know that these things are killing me slowly. And I know how critical my body is at right now, what state I'm in, that I'm like, all right, at this point, I would let Ronald McDonald take these things out. I mean, at this point, anyone could cut them out. I don't even care. But I knew at that point I had to go and get cleared. I had to first find a surgeon that I had no idea even where to start with. I had to go get cleared through every single specialist that I had gone through because, of course, cardiology, they want to make sure you're fine. We show that you've been to cardiology for heart palpitations. You're on all this asthma medication. Can you even handle going through the surgery? Can your lungs handle it? So I did go through a little bit of time, going through from all of my specialists again to get cleared. That thought was still like, oh, I know what's making me sick, but there is a possibility that I'm too sick to be able to handle the surgery. And so here that excitement went from here of I'm getting them out to like, oh, this could be a bad moment.
Mm.
And so fast forward, because I didn't play around. I mean, I was that little nightmare girl that called their office every day. Do you have a cancellation? Do you have anybody that canceled today? And I did. I got into all of my specialists, got the clearance, and got all my tests ran. And I had my explant 20 days later.
Oh, amazing.
I was not playing. I got on and started Googling breast implant illness. I joined my Arizona group. I contacted Robin Tao and said, can we please meet for lunch? I need to know more. I need to know how I can bring, awareness about. And so we all met up for lunch, and it was like sisters ever since. And, I joined GPAC, the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition, trying to bring the awareness. And that's been an amazing adventure and frustrating at times because we do work with the FDA and the plastic surgeons societies, and but we do work with so many global advocates as well, which is amazing because we're just trying to get informed consent, get that awareness out there. Miss Robin Tao is like the leader of the train on getting the laws passed and getting informed consent mandated. We did get that here in Arizona. So now our plastic surgeons are required to sit down and let you know, hey, these are the things that are in your breast implants. These are the possibilities that could happen with your breast implants. We feel like we were not given that informed consent. The next generation, the next people having them absolutely have to have it. It is not acceptable for them to not have that. So we're going to continue to fight. And I believe there's 5 other states that we're working on right now as well with that, and working with the federal and state legislation and trying to get that all passed and moving. We're working at trying to get a code written so it can be, covered with insurance. When I had mine done, it wasn't covered.
That would be
And
amazing. Like the amount of people I've talked
we-
to who can't afford it, like it's just so
yeah,
expensive.
and you just have to stay sick. If you don't have, I was told, you don't have the money, sweetie, you're going to just stay sick. Like, what are
Mhm.
people supposed to do? We wouldn't have done this to ourselves had we been informed and told that, no woman's going to sign up for their hair falling off and their toenails falling out and they're, not able to move around or walk. Nobody's going to sign up for that if they knew. So we will fight till the bitter end, to make this happen. And if these surgeons aren't going to do it, we're going to make laws to make them do it. Someone
Mhm.
has to be held accountable. Right now, the FDA
Mhm.
is not held accountable. The surgeons are not held accountable. Every single person is protected except for the patient, and that has to change. It's
Mm.
absolutely unacceptable. So
Yeah.
that's where we're coming in hot and trying to bring awareness. We're trying to hit social media. We're trying to do. We'd like to do some billboards throughout the United States as well. So social media, as you know, can be kind of hard with them shadow banning if you have an opinion on anything. And
Mhm.
Lord forbid, if you get in Big Pharma's way or get into the way of their pocket, they're going to, shadow ban for everything. So we're going to get other avenues and hopefully get some programs going. We'd like to get some programs in place to be able to, go to schools and speak at starting at elementary schools. Because you know what, I'm sorry, but if we can talk about gender roles and everything else in kindergarten and everything else, why can't we talk about body image and loving our bodies and not having to force this on our young girls to be some little plastic Barbie doll model that now we have to have implants and inject our fillers and, you know, all of this stuff that is nothing but toxic to these women.
Exactly. Going back to where you mentioned you went back to your previous specialists before going in for your surgery to get the clearances. What was their reaction like when you were telling them about this?
So their reaction was this was kind of fun. I took in several packets with me. Every time I went, I took in a packet of information about breast implant illness. I went and printed everything off. I took little business cards because at that point I had gotten business cards from Robin and was able to hand out, here's where you can find us at. So I went into my oncologist, and that one was really interesting. I had just been into him the month before. I was being followed every single month for the high tumor markers. But every single month he said, I just don't know why. I don't know what's happening. I don't know why. We're just going to watch it. For a year and a half, I did that. And so when I went into him that month before, he had just done an MRI on my breast because I was having breast pain. And so when he comes in, he says, oh my gosh, Heidi, I hear you're here to get clearance for surgery for your breast implants. And I said, yeah, I found out that this is what's poisoning me. And it's crazy because I've been to 7 of you specialists, including 2 different oncologists, and nobody addressed it. And I put that I had 2 different sets on my intake form. How did you guys all miss this? How?
Whenever you go to a new specialist, like I've done it as well, like breast augmentation, like it's there, it's on the list, like what medications you're on, what surgeries you've had, it's there, like, but
Yes.
yeah, it's just frustrating.
So the frustration was extremely high. And he goes, I am so sorry. I forgot completely you had breast implants. And I said, again, you just did an MRI last month on them. Unacceptable. I'm a patient that fell through the cracks for you. And you didn't know about it. I'll give you that. But now you're going to be educated on it. Here's the situation. So I gave him the packet. At that point, tumor markers were still high. They were at 124. And they were supposed to be at 36 or below. So at this point, he says, this is absolutely probably what is making you sick. So I go get him out. I come back to him for a follow-up about 6 weeks later. My tumor markers had dropped to 95. And when I went in, he says, I just can't believe what a difference. You look so much better. Like it is night and day. And that first month, I dropped 13 pounds of inflammation, right? So when he came in, he says, and Heidi, I have to tell you, last night, my daughter came to me and wants to get breast implant. And I said, well, Dr. Lee, if you tell her that it's a good idea to get them, knowing my story and knowing that this packet of information that I just gave to you, then you're signing a slow death wish for her. He said, I'm going to tell you right now, I will never, ever, ever send another patient for breast implants ever again, because that's the first step that we do as a oncologist. When there is cancer and they do the double mastectomy, they send them off to a plastic surgeon to be reconstructed.
Yeah, exactly like they did for Robin, I think. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so she only had her implants 4 months and they took her down so fast. And she's had cancer 3 times. She said my implants were way worse than ever having the 3 cancers. So he was enlightened, which was really, really awesome. One of the other oncologists that I saw says to me, so there's a lot of people that have implants and it's very rare that anyone has a problem. I said, well, do you know anything about ALCL? Do you know anything about, these,
The
oh, I know all
sarcoma.
about
Yeah.
it. Right. And he says, oh, I know all about that. And I said, well, if you even Google just breast implants, now the illness comes up with it and it's all over the place. So what you're saying to me is I'm not believing that, because if you even Googled it once, you would know about breast implant illness. So I fired him at that point. It was like, I'm done. I'm done with these doctors that are just going to gaslight you and tell you that it's normal that you can't walk, or that you're having, this joint pain, or that you have such brain fog that you're driving and you forget where you're driving to. That happened to me several times. I would be driving and I would just go, oh my God, where was I going?
Oh gosh.
And it just, I mean, I knew where I lived and stuff, but I would literally be out and about for the day and just lose track of where was I headed to.
No,
So
that's not a normal way to live for
that's not
anybody.
normal. No.
Yeah.
So I went, from specialist to specialist, and most of them were really, really receptive about it. Especially when I went back and said to my cardiologist, I haven't had a single palpitation since I took them out. So you can't tell me that those things are good for the body. They're sitting right on top of our vital organs.
Mm.
The day I had my explant, I didn't take any medication again for that. I stopped all 9 medications. And I was on 4 asthma medications. I was on the nebulizer treatment 4 times a day on top of it.
Yeah.
I was struggling to breathe. So the day of surgery, done with all of them. Night and day difference.
Absolutely. You were saying before that it was like within 20 days from like having your appointment to having your surgery. Did you have much time to prepare? And if you did, like what did you do to prepare for your surgery?
I really didn't have a lot of time because it was so appointment after appointment. So I really didn't have a lot of time to really process it or get scared too much about it. I was more in the excitement mode of, oh my gosh, I am getting my life. I'm going to get my life back. I just knew as soon as I got them out that things were going to change for me because I went downhill so fast. I knew it had to have been something going on within. And, as soon as they started happening, it was like, okay, something's really, really wrong. I just wasn't sure exactly what. I was pretty sure I had some random cancer that they were just going to find. And here we are. So I really didn't have a lot of time to prep. I took about a couple of days before I asked my girlfriend if I could stay over at her house, just because I wasn't sure what to expect, and so like I didn't realize afterwards I wasn't going to be able to open a bottle of water because of, them cutting through my muscle and doing the repair and all of that I was going to need so much help. And so thank God she was an angel and was like, you can stay as long as you need. So I stayed like 6 weeks with her and just I prepped up a bunch of like meal things ahead of time and froze them because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. And thank God I did, because you don't really feel like cooking or doing anything. And as you know, you're still struggling with like the fatigue and dealing with detoxing. And, your body goes through being filleted open from the middle of your chest to your armpit and everywhere else, that it's a major surgery. So I really didn't have a whole lot of time to prep. Had I had more time to prep and get ready for it, I think I would have had a little more anxiety about it.
Yeah.
And because I would have been researching more on the surgery side and seeing like what they do and
seeing the horror stories and oh gosh, I remember even the morning of my surgery, I had jumped onto Instagram and I probably looked up the hashtags or something, and there was one Instagram that came up that it was like, it's false, it's fake, like you're getting your implants out and you're still going to be sick. And I'm like, oh, like should I be going through this? Like it was that morning of my surgery, and I'm glad I did not listen to that one in the hundreds of or thousands of other posts that are there, because if I was I don't know whether I was really that anxious about it myself. I was the same. I was like excited for what life was going to be like afterwards. But if I was somebody who was suffering from anxiety, which these implants can cause for people, I probably would have just cancelled it, like because of one post. So yeah, like I can understand it was probably in a way a positive thing that you didn't have the time, because then you just straight in, off you go, and like look at you now, like it's been a positive move for you.
it has. And I did really struggle with anxiety. So I think it was better that it happened that way, because I think my mind would have just like went to China and back with it and, researched every little detail of it. So I think I would have gotten freaked out.
For sure. So sort of tell me about like explanting and how you're feeling afterwards, and what sort of helped you, like we were talking about staying with a friend and preparing meals, but is there anything else that you'd recommend for people like to help them after explanting?
Yeah. So I'm at 3.5 years after explant. And one of the biggest things I think that women really tend to do is expect immediate changes. And you may have them. I had quite a few. My skin and my eyes immediate. The neck pain was immediately gone. But we have to remember we didn't get sick overnight, right? So you can't just expect, boom, you're immediately better, because sometimes it takes years. I'm at year 3.5, and I can tell you, until that first year point, I still didn't feel like 100%. I mean, I felt much better. I mean, like 80% better, but I still felt like a little bit, I was still struggled with, the chronic fatigue a little bit and some of the insomnia. Then I would also say definitely I went to a very clean diet, and I try to do mostly organic if I can. And mainly that is because so many pesticides are harmful to, especially us women that have been exposed to all those chemicals with the breast implants, because our body already has a problem detoxing from that overload. And so anything you add to it is just going to add to your inflammation. So I found for me that, keeping a clean diet, if I, slip and have my little glass of wine here or there, I know the next couple of days are going to be a little rough with my joints. And so then I'm choice if, okay, do I want to take that chance? If I'm meeting the girls for a cup of wine or something, it might be worth it. Also, I started paying attention to different foods that might cause inflammation. Like I learned, for me, one of my favorites is tomatoes. If I eat tomatoes, I even have a bite of a tomato, I start getting like inflammation immediately. Within a couple of hours, I have joint pain. So really paying attention to the diet, really trying to pay attention to how many chemicals you're exposing yourself to as well. For instance, I did just some simple changes with, I went to coconut oil instead of all my nice, $50 creams that have all these chemicals and silicone. You would be surprised how many of your products in your bathroom, under your sink, that you use every day on your skin have silicone in them. If you have, your hair still struggling, my hair still struggles. I've lost about half my hair and about half the curls that I had. But I mean, at that point, I didn't care. I was willing to do the bald thing. I didn't, whatever it takes. But when I went back to the doctor for a follow-up, my primary, and I told him, well, I'm still struggling with my hair. It's kind of like little bit thin. Thank goodness I was a hairdresser, for 20 years and can fake it. But he said, I want you to take a look at your products. And I said, oh, I always buy the good stuff. I was a hairdresser. And I got home and I pulled out the products out of my shower that I was using every day and was like, oh my gosh, my shampoo, it says it right here, it has silicone right in it. Anything with an own at the end is a silicone byproduct. So I just went through and I literally was like, garbage can to anything that had the silicone or anything that was just a lot of chemicals. I just honestly tried to cut it out. And I find that that's helped me tremendously. These are the things that worked for me. They may not work for other people, but
Yes.
these are just things that we find, and we always ask questions with the ladies and, what's helped everybody. And so we just try to gather information and help each other. We're a community. And once we've been through what we've been through, we find that the ladies are so helpful, just helping each other through this process. And hey, this is how I felt and this is what I experienced. And then nobody feels like they're going through it alone, because we already felt so alone, being kind of like pushed away from doctor to doctor. And some of us lost family members or friends over it because, of how sick we were. So I love that our community is what it is and that there's so many answers out there and so many of us that have experienced exactly the same things. My story's not unique. I have talked to thousands of women that have had the same exact thing, even worse, So I love that we're all trying to band together and just be like, you know what, over our dead bodies, are any of these other women going to go through what we had to go through?
It is a really good community, and like each time I talk to somebody new about it, I'm just more and more thankful for, we've been through a lot. We've been through years of, like, I sort of say I was living a half life because there were so many things that I stopped doing, and it was subconsciously. It wasn't even like, taking my dogs down to the beach. I only live about a 25-minute drive from the beach, but I'd end up so sore. And then with the pain for me comes frustration and mood, like a bad
Mhm.
mood. And so it just wouldn't be enjoyable. And I don't think I made a conscious decision, like, I'm not going to go and take this walk at the beach because it's painful. I just stopped going because I was like, I don't enjoy that anymore. Yeah, in the last couple of months, I'm like, oh, wait, like, I could do that now. Like I have done it. Like our weather is just all over the place at the moment, so it's not always beach weather, even though it's
Right.
summer here in Adelaide. But yeah, like I'm like, oh wow, my partner and I are doing a walk every night after dinner, at least 3.5 kilometers, which I calculated it's a couple of miles, like 2 miles or so,
Yeah.
maybe. And
Yeah.
like I wouldn't have been able to do that before, like living this half life and not doing much after work because I was so exhausted and so tired and knew how I would not recover from that walk. But now every night, like we can go for a big walk. It's
Yeah.
just
And
incredible.
isn't it amazing how much time we lost? And
Mm,
it just blows my mind. I recently started talking to this really nice guy, and he asked me, have you been to see the mountains over here? Have you been over here? Have you been here? And I was like, I haven't. And then I
mm,
was sitting there, and after I got off the phone, I thought, gosh, you know what? I wasn't able to go and, hike or do any of that stuff. So I just quit going, like you said. You just kind of
mm.
quit. And then we were talking about, I used to play the guitar. Well, I had to give that up because my joints were so bad. I used to train jujitsu. I had to give that up because I had the chronic fatigue and my muscles couldn't handle it. So we lose out on so much. And I went through a guilt complex for a while there because 19 years I did this to myself. 19 years my daughter lost out on her mom being able to be 100%, you know, there. Or I mean, I was there, but it wasn't as well
Yeah,
as I could have been. And it makes me sad that we've lost so much time. And but at the same time, like you said, starting to gain some of those things and looking at some of those things that we lost out on, that we lost our joy in, because I think a lot of us suffered with depression and stuff and didn't even realize it.
yeah,
And all those heavy metals will do that to you. That builds up in your system, and that does interrupt so many different things and systems in your body. So it's amazing watching the transformation that the ladies have afterwards, like the life that comes back in the eyes.
straight
I just
away.
over. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
immediate. And to see the skin, the glow come back, and just, we call it the fountain of youth, that everyone gets 10 years back when they get them out. I would love to see for the future that we see less and less women implanting each year. Hopefully we'll make enough of an impact, and hopefully we can get some of those programs going in the schools and go talk, and women reach out at the churches and talk and we need big platforms where we can reach women, and not only women but men as well, because the men are affected just as much, and we don't
yeah,
even think about that when we're going through it. I didn't even consider that. Like, gosh, my partner, what did they lose out on?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and it's like, oh, wow, would my marriage have gone different had I not had those breast implants? I
Yeah,
mean,
so
you
many
start
what
questioning
ifs.
stuff. Yeah.
Going back to like how you mentioned your daughter and when you were sort of planning for your funeral, when you thought like there were no answers, you thought you were dying. How did your daughter feel throughout all of that? Tell me a bit about that.
So I kept everything for the most part hidden. She lives up in a different state. Her husband's in the Coast Guard up there. And so I was able to hide a lot of what I was going through. And when I would go and visit, I would never say, oh my gosh, I can't make it. I would just, push through. And so I kept most of what I was going through really silent. But when I was getting so sick, I called her and said, I did put, this is the code to my bank account just in case, there's some things. And she would say, oh, mom, we're not talking about this, or, don't be crazy. But she didn't really have any idea how sick I was, and my plan was just to just sort of fade out and just kind of be, I know it was just heartbreaking. But it just was like, I just didn't want it to be hard for anyone. So when I got back and was like, okay, now I'm here and I'm not going to die. Now I have to kind of rebuild a lot of relationships and stuff because I had pulled back so much and kept everything so secretive that she's like, and my girlfriends, one of my best friends, she's like, I'm in the same city as you. And I had no idea
Mm.
that
It's like one of those silent illnesses, like people just don't know. And when I tell people, they're like, what? Like you were doing so much. You had all this joint pain. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, kind of stubborn in that way that I won't let that kind of thing stop me from doing stuff. But it was a struggle. Like it was such a struggle, but no one would have known. Yeah, I
yes,
feel you.
yeah, same thing. And so I think we have just sort of this tough spirit in us that's like, we're not going to get taken down. So I just kept, fighting through and just, well, I was planning on just writing out this nice little exit letter, if you will.
Heidi.
And I
Oh.
know, I know it's just hard, but
Mhm.
I just wanted it to be, such an easy transition.
Yeah.
And then I was like hoping that she would forgive me for not, burdening her with it all. I didn't want her to be upset or, that I hadn't really told her everything, but I didn't want to burden her with it at the same time.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
that's
she
a
was only in
testament
her
to
early 20s.
Yeah, and that's a massive testament to your personality, like the fact that you were going through all of that. But oh God, I'm gonna get to you. Like that you thought so much about everyone else in that situation, like tidying up your life basically to make. Oh, like that's horrible that you had to go through that feeling so alone, but like so huge of you as a person to do that. Like, oh, I can't even imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah, it was tough. It was really
Yeah,
tough. And like, that's why I said, like, jumping right into it, going and doing the advocacy right away helped
yeah.
me as well, just kind of like push through. And now I have a purpose and I can help others. And so that's where I just kind of focused all that energy and just did it. But I do, like, even talking about it now, I felt myself getting teary
Yeah,
eyed and it's like,
yeah,
oh, I know that's coming, that I'm going to have to really, process that. Wow, girl, you really were accepting that you were dying before
yeah,
you were 50.
yeah, and that's young. Like that's young to be thinking about that without having a known illness. Like if you, I guess it'd be a different way of thinking if you knew you had cancer and it was terminal. That would still be absolutely horrible. But you've acknowledged the fact that you're not going to be around for much longer, but you don't know why. There's a lot of complex emotions to deal with, and yeah, I can imagine that there is still a lot to unpack for sure.
Yeah, and then test after test, and you're just going, how are these mostly coming back normal other than my tumor
Mm.
markers? How is that when you can physically see it happening? Like, it just was mind blowing. So yeah, it was a lot to really process, but I was going down quick. It was right at like 2017, and I had my explant in 2019. So I was from specialist to specialist during that time, and it was like, oh gosh, I'm going down quick.
I'm so glad you found out about it. Like it would have been great for you if you had been able to find out about it earlier, but I'm glad it happened when it did because you just don't know what those next few years would have been like.
I know for sure, without a doubt, it would have been before I was 50. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it,
mm,
3 more years with this. There's just no way.
yeah.
So yeah, thank God for that news special.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Was it Chris Pickle? Was the
Yes,
newsreader?
Crystal,
Yeah,
thank you
I
so
love that
much.
surname. So when we've caught up previously, like, I like to try and have a chat with people before I have them on the podcast. We were talking about like how I was feeling and like I sort of felt like my symptoms had gone backwards and you're like, oh, I think you're in
Detox wave.
flare up. Yeah, detox wave and flare up. I think they're called a few different things by a few different people. And you had really good explanations for it. So I think that's something that needs a little bit more awareness for people. What can you tell me about how you experience them and what they are?
Yeah, so for me, I'm in Arizona, like I said, and it's really hot here. So we spend so much time outside. And after my explant that first year, I could only be outside like 5 minutes without physically getting nauseated and almost throwing up. It was so bad. I was really sensitive to the heat. And so I was talking to one of my nurse practitioner friends, and she said, I really think that one of the reasons women that in Arizona too that struggle with how hot it is here, we spend all this time out there. She explained it to me like if you took a scoop of Crisco oil when you go to cook and slap that on that hot pan, and when that oil heats up, think of that as your toxins heating up, how easily they spread throughout your pan. And she goes, so think of that in your body, like just maybe easing the way and your toxins moving a little more easily. And so you get those little waves of nausea. And so that's what we're seeing is a little bit of detox flaring up. And I thought, oh my gosh, that makes absolute sense. And so over the last couple of years, I am able to stay out in the sun a little bit longer. So it is getting easier. Like I can do an hour and a half outside now and probably make it without getting too overheated. Sometimes you catch me with an umbrella all the time though, because I need to be under shade because I overheat so easily. And I don't know if that has to do with the thyroid storm that it can create with us and everything else, with our hormones and everything that it can disrupt. But I do find I'm getting better with it. I think it's just going to be a matter of time, trying to work all those toxins out. And, some of it is never going to leave us. Some of us have silicone throughout. Some of them, have silicone in their lymph nodes, and some of that they can't retract or get out during surgery. So some of this is just stuff that we're going to be long-term, I say with anything that's, long-term. You may have, some joint pain. I have some joint pain now, but compared to what it was before, nothing. It's like a 2 versus a 20. So on those little tiny flare-up days, I can handle that. It's nothing like it was. It's so doable. Yeah, I might have to throw in a little wrist guard just to kind of help support it a little bit, but it's like I can still take my coffee and I can still do what I do. So I'll take those little tiny flare-ups. And I went from 40 symptoms down to 3 or 4. And symptoms, we should maybe even touch base on some of the symptoms because a lot of people don't even put together that it has to do with the breast implants. I didn't have breast pain to start with. Everything else started. And so I did make a little list of just some of the things that I had experienced because I didn't place it and put it together with my breast implants.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I'm getting older. Oh, I'm having insomnia because I'm getting older, and the joint pain because, oh, I'm almost 50, So once I took a look at the list of the symptoms, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have almost every one of those on that list. It's insane how many that I had. So I don't know about you, but like I really struggled with the chronic fatigue, the terrible joint pain, the brain fog, like I said, was terrible, muscle pain and weakness, hair loss, dry skin rashes, chronic inflammation, insomnia, bloodshot eyes. I went through Visine, a bottle a week, jaundiced skin, the feeling of choking. I constantly was clearing my throat. I had onset of asthma, digestive issues. I ran a low-grade fever for years. I had night sweats that I would wake up every night in a pool of sweat. My ears were ringing. I had food intolerance. I had heat intolerance, heart palpitations, swollen lymph nodes, frequent urination. I would urinate 13 times a night. I would wake up that many times to urinate. And that's the toxins trying to get pushed out. The anxiety, vertigo, frequent infections, chemical sensitivities. Like that's just some of my symptoms.
Yeah.
It was just
a lot. And that's not even all of them.
No, it's just mind blowing. And now I struggle with a little bit of joint pain here and there. Some insomnia, I'm talking little. I might wake up 2 to 3 times versus 13. Again, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And then the brain fog comes and goes. So, but other than that, all the other things since that first year, they just started dropping off one by one, by one, by one.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's mind blowing.
Every time I hear a list, because there's multiple lists online and like on social media that you see of breast implant illness. And like when I was talking to Kate for my last episode, she talked about an eye twitch and I was like, oh, my right eye was twitching like in like the lead up and that stopped. And I didn't even attribute that to breast implants. And when you mentioned low grade fever, I didn't have a fever, but I always ran hotter, like towards the hotter end of the scale. And my dad, towards the end of his life, was in a nursing home, and they had to, like, this is right at the start of COVID, so they had to check my temperature every time I went in. And I'm like, I do run hot, and they're like, you're okay, you're within the thing, but you're at the, like, towards the
Yeah.
higher end of what we'll
Yeah.
accept. So yeah, there's another one that I hadn't realized.
Yeah, I saw you
Yeah.
when I said it. It's amazing. We almost sent me home from work during COVID because of it. It was like, I'm not run. This is what I've been running for years, I swear.
Yeah.
But now I run normal.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So you can't tell me these things are not toxic, right?
Yeah.
And just that
Yeah.
they're safe. And so, in September 8th, that the FDA here just announced that they are finding the SCC cancer in the capsules. So that is why that we really want those doctors, when they go to do that explant, to do a full capsulectomy and get the entire capsule out, because we don't want anything staying in that body that has got any
No.
toxins involved, anything that could create those cancers. So very critical when women go to find a surgeon, they need to find a skilled surgeon, because you'll
Yes.
find right now there's a lot of plastic surgeons out there, shame on them, shame on them, that are leaving the capsules in, or giving the women the choice to leave them in the capsule. Can you imagine a doctor saying, oh, you can just take the choice
We'll
if
leave
you
a
want to
little
leave?
bit of cancer in there, like, that's
Yeah.
fine.
And get
No.
this, one of the doctors here that has says that to her patients works for the FDA. Go figure. So that's a little bit of a mind blower, and I don't want to. Well, I do want to kind of call her out, but anyways, you can narrow it down because there's not many of them on the women on the board there. So she's been in it for a long time and needs to be retired from it. Clearly,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
There's a lot that needs to sort of happen.
I'd like to just reiterate that make sure to give yourself grace and time through the healing process. That is so huge. And to not put those expectations that every other woman, their journey is not your journey at the same healing process. So she may be 3 weeks ahead of you on explant and may have, some more symptoms that are gone. But give yourself the time to catch up, because you just may have a different way of detoxing. You may have
A
a
different
gene that,
immune system.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's the MTHFR gene that also is a key player in how you detox. So 40% of the women do have that gene. And so that is a key player in how you do detoxing. So there are things out there, and women can find that as well.
I go to swear whenever I read that gene,
Yeah,
but
I always
I
call
heard
it the mother sucker.
yes. But like
Because
I
it
heard
really is.
it is, it absolutely. And that plays, I was talking with a friend at work about it recently, actually, and her sister had brought it up with her, and it has, it can also, be a marker for, like, if somebody's got ADHD, or if they're going to have a lot of miscarriages. Like, there's just so much that's involved in it. So there was a surgeon that I follow on Instagram, someone in the States, and they call it the MTHFR gene. I was like, oh, I haven't heard it being called that before. But yeah, they've got someone who's, I think, still studying to be a doctor, and she's actually doing some research into the link between that gene and between women who react badly to having breast implants. So, I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure, to see what sort of happens over the next little while.
Absolutely. And yeah, I do have a girlfriend that is very educated on that gene and can help women too with that. So she's a nurse and she went through explant as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she has the gene as well and knows how to help,
Yeah.
let you know how to help yourself with that. So
Oh, I'd love to have
I
her on the
haven't been tested
podcast.
for it, but I definitely want to test for that gene, because it does make a difference. And even down to like
Absolutely.
what vitamins you can take. If you have that gene, folic acid is not your friend. And
Right. Okay.
yeah, I think that my girlfriend Mandy, I think she has 3 different variations of it. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot to it, and it's kind of like, I'm still learning about it. So I don't know enough about it to teach on it or let anyone know on it. I would rather hook them up with the right connections so we get the right information out there. But there's
Yeah.
definitely a connection there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to talk any more about GPAC?
Yeah. So we work, with the different medical groups and the FDA. And our big goal is in the plastic surgeon societies. I mean, we work with a lot of people. And we just really, our goal is to get informed consent, nationwide, worldwide. We want it to happen everywhere. It should be mandated. That is our mission is, we want women to be informed. If they know and they still want to get those toxic bags, then great. Go ahead and knock yourself out. We'll be here when you're done and ready for us to help you through the process of the other side of it. But we want to make sure that someone's getting held accountable for this stuff. So that's why the laws have to come into play, because if we don't make these laws happen, these surgeons are not going to give informed consent. We
Mm-hmm.
are the product of what they've been able to do. So they haven't given it before. They're not going to give it without being mandated to. And that's what GPAC's mission is to get that informed consent and the awareness out there so we can have that happen for the women. So we do collaborate with women in different, people all over the globe. And anyone that wants to work with us, you can always reach out to gpacunited.org
Mm-hmm.
and reach out and help us spread the word. And if you have legislators or, people that you've got contacts with or news people or, anyone that can write stories, we just want to get the word out there and help save as many women from going
For
through
sure.
what we did. Yeah, join us and help us get that fight going. And, write to your Congress people and write to everyone. And let's get this, if we put enough pressure, maybe we can get them to get on board with it. I know that the plastic surgeons, we have a group of great, great doctors that are not even doing implants anymore. They explant only. I would love to see more of those guys come aboard. And I think, the more that we do the educating out there, hopefully we can get everyone educated. And we would like to see the FDA. I'd like to, make a call of action to the FDA. We've asked several times for them to send a letter to all specialties. We were sent out to 7 different specialists, 10 different specialists. Let's send it to every specialist that they can be aware so these women don't have to go through.
So that can begin to be a question that's asked when someone's got some weird symptoms that
Exactly.
aren't, like, oh, weird
Exactly.
question, but do you have breast implants?
Right. And
Yeah,
why
like,
the FDA won't send this letter out, it's mind blowing.
mm,
They say, oh, we put it on our website, so that's good enough. No, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
yeah,
I never went on the FDA's website. Why would I even think to go on there?
no,
So no,
exactly.
it's not okay that they are slacking and that they're not helping to stop this problem. It boils down to the money, and we all know how that goes down.
Yeah,
So, but a call to action to them, because they shouldn't be sleeping at night knowing what they know and allowing to happen what is going on.
yeah. And
So,
then call us crazy for having, like, having all these symptoms and not knowing why. And,
yes. So we would like to see the FDA send out a letter to every single specialist, down to chiropractic, your dentist, everyone, everybody, and there's no reason not to. They can do it with one click of a button. They have
yeah,
the database to be able to email these doctors in a split second. There's no reason not to. You know what they told us here? They told us that we should just go ahead and take care of that and email these doctors. We don't have access to all those emails. We don't have access to that stuff. You're the FDA. You approved this to be on the market. Hit that button and send that letter. Hit the button and send the letter. Do the
yeah,
right thing.
absolutely.
Do the right thing. That's all we're asking. It's so
One day,
frustrating.
one day
It's so
we'll make it through. Yeah, yeah. Now, if there would be one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self back when you were maybe considering breast implants, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, little one, you have to learn to love your body the way it is. First and foremost, I would have taught myself to learn to love myself a little sooner and know that breast implants is not going to make you a better and more sexier woman or all of the lies that they, set out there for you. I would tell my younger self as well to do your research. Do your research. Don't don't just take the face value and the big people that have the money to put on those campaigns where they tell you that it's going to be a safe device for you for your lifetime, and it's not. Don't get fooled. That's what I would tell myself. Don't do it. Run as fast as you can. Don't get implants. Oh my gosh, save your soul. Don't do it.
And just finally, where can our listeners follow along with your story?
So you can find me on Instagram at Heidi Brown, BII Advocate. And then I'm on Facebook as well. And I don't know how to find my handle on Facebook, I have to tell you, but I am holding breast implants in my hands. And it says GPAC on the front of my picture, so you can't miss me there. And then our GPAC website is gpacunited.org. And there is so many resources on there for the women, and checklists to take to your doctor and questions to take with you and things to help you along the way. Also, one last thing I do want to mention that I don't feel a lot of the women know is that any woman that has had breast cancer and has gotten breast implants is covered 100% under an act from 1998 that does cover explant at 100%.
Okay,
So,
very useful information. Yes.
yeah. So they at least have an avenue there of not having to come up with that money. And we will continue to fight to get that code written so we can get that covered. I know there are a couple of insurances that are covering Blue Cross Shield all over, and Aetna, there's a lot of Aetna plans that are covering it as well. So hopefully with the more awareness and everything else that's going on, that more and more insurance companies will hop on board and hopefully start covering this for our ladies.
Absolutely. So I'll tag Heidi and I'll tag GPAC in the Instagram when I post about today's episode, and I'll try and find your Facebook handle as well and put that in the show notes too, just so that people know how they can find you. And I'll put a link to the GPAC website in there as well. Yeah, just so that all that information is there so that people can get it from the podcast episode.
Perfect. And then they can feel free to share my contact information with anyone. If anyone has any questions, or I can, help out with just support. It's a lot. It's a lot to go through. And sometimes it's just nice having someone on the other end that says, I know I've been through it and I totally feel you. So if you need to cry on my shoulder or talk about your story or anything, I'm here to help through this process.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you so much for taking time out of your really busy day to join us on the episode today. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for what you're doing and bringing all the awareness that you do as well, and helping these women have a voice and to get it out there. It's amazing, and I appreciate you making the difference and taking your story and what happened with you and turning it into something that's going to help thousands of women.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thanks, Heidi. This podcast shares my own experience and research. I'm not a medical or health professional. You can find me on Instagram at CouldItBeII Podcast. Thank you to my incredibly talented partner Jacob Tengdale for the intro and outro music. All recording, editing and artwork is done by me.